Today we continue our series of reflections on the life of Jesus, that we are to behold Him and we are to become like Him. And today we look at Jesus as the fierce warrior. Listen to this passage from Matthew chapter 16. From that time on, Jesus began to explain to His disciples that He must go to Jerusalem and suffer many things at the hands of the elders, the chief priests and the teachers of the law, and that He must be killed, and on the third day be raised to life. Now Peter took Him aside and began to rebuke Him. "Never, Lord," he said, "this shall never happen to you." Jesus turned and said to Peter, "Get behind me, Satan. You're a stumbling block to me. You do not have in mind the concerns of God, but merely human concerns." You say, hold on, buddy, man. That's not the playful Jesus we looked at last week. I mean, last week we have Jesus playing along with Peter, talking about paying the temple tax, telling Peter to do something so crazy and absurd as to go out fishing, and the first fish you catch, reach down its mouth, and you'll get those 4 drachmas, and you'll be able to go pay the temple tax. I mean, we saw last week this playful Jesus. And now we swap gears and we see Jesus saying to Peter, "I'm telling you, man, you're acting like Satan, and you need to stop this." And so today we continue to look at the incredible personality of Jesus. That Jesus was not some kind of one-dimensional figure. He's not flat. My friends, He's alive. Sometimes you read the Gospels and you almost get whiplash by the mood changes that Jesus goes through. One moment He's playing, the next moment He's rebuking. How do you put that together? I think what we've got to understand here is when we read the Gospels that our Savior Jesus was a hunted man. That people were after Him. We see it from the very beginning. If you went back to Matthew chapter 2. You see, when they had gone, an angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream. "Get up, take your child and his mother and escape to Egypt. Stay there until I tell you, for Herod is going to search for the child to kill him." So he got up, took the child and his mother during the night, and left for Egypt. I mean, we've read this story so many times, we don't get it. And my friends, we're witnessing genocide here. Just like we witnessed in the last century in Bosnia and Rwanda. We've got a leader that's willing to wipe out a whole group of babies. We got blood left all over this city from Herod's army. And Jesus is in this fierce battle. And we see even from His childhood that He's a hunted man. He has to watch it. You go to John chapter 7. After this, Jesus went around in Galilee. He did not want to go out in Judea because the Jewish leaders were looking for a way to kill Him. To grasp His incredible personality, you've got to see that this man often spends his time on the run. Matthew chapter 12. But the Pharisees went out and plotted how they might kill Jesus. Aware of this, Jesus withdrew from that place. A large crowd followed Him, and He healed all who were ill. And then we get to Matthew chapter 8. Jesus replied, "Foxes have dens and birds have nests, but the Son of Man has no place to lay His head." Sometimes we read that verse and we think, oh, the sweet poverty of Jesus, not really enough money to even have a bed. My friends, this is not a display of the poverty of Jesus. It's a display of the lifestyle of Jesus. Is in this battle, He is a man on a run. Now here's what we got to understand. He's operating behind enemy lines. That's what He's doing. Jesus comes into enemy territory, and He's seeking to occupy and to fight in that territory. I don't know how many of you watched the movie Lone Survivor. Anybody seen that? It's a pretty rough movie. I mean, if you're not strong, man, I would say be careful to go watch that. And it stars Mark Wahlberg, and he's playing a Navy SEAL named Mark Luttrell. And 4 of the Navy SEALs were in Afghanistan, and they were way behind enemy lines. And they'd gone searching for an Al-Qaeda leader. And while they were there, close to the village, they were on this hill. And on the hill, as they were just about to attack, they encountered some Afghan shepherds. And they're set with the moral dilemma. Do they free the shepherds, or do they execute them to make sure the mission is taking place? And it's an incredible discussion in the movie. It's a true story. In the long run, because of the morality of these men, they free these shepherds. And they let them go. They could have tied them up to a tree and let them freeze. They could have executed them, but they decided they're not going to do that. And just as they even predicted, these shepherds scramble and they find the Taliban and they tell on them. And it's a fierce fight on the side of that mountain. And Luttrell is the only one who survives. He's the lone survivor. It's an incredible story. And sometimes when we read the life of Jesus, we're so caught up in how sweet and how compassionate Jesus is, we forget to see that he's behind enemy lines. How does Jesus handle this? I want to give you 3 points this morning. First of all, in the middle of this, Jesus was focused, all right? He was very focused. He knew why he was there. In Luke chapter 4, when the trouble even begins in Nazareth, in his own hometown, he says to them in the synagogue his life mission statement. The Spirit of the Lord is on me because he's anointed me to proclaim good news to the poor. He sent me to proclaim freedom for the prisoners and recovery of sight for the blind, to set the oppressed free and to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor. What's Jesus say? I'm here in this war to free those who are held hostage. I'm here to give freedom to people that are oppressed. And he says focused on that mission. All you got to do is walk through the book of Luke and you'll see it. Luke chapter 9, it's coming time for the cross. Verse 51, as the time approached for him to be taken up to heaven, Jesus resolutely set out for Jerusalem. He turns toward Jerusalem. He knows what he's got to do to win this battle, and that's to give his life. I like the old translation there. He set his face toward Jerusalem. And then as he gets closer, he's warned that the authorities, like Herod, want to kill him. Listen to his bravery and his response in Luke chapter 13. He replied, "Go tell that fox, I will keep on driving out demons and healing people today and tomorrow, and on the third day I will reach my goal. I am not backing down from why I came. I'm focused on it." And then in Luke chapter 19, verse 10, he sums it all up in one sentence. For the Son of Man came to seek and save that which is lost. Because you're not going to understand the vivid, multifaceted personality of Jesus unless you understand that he is on a focused mission that he won't be taken away from. And that's why we also can say today that Jesus was fierce. I mean, there was an intensity about Jesus. Now, here's though what's interesting to us and what's surprising if you'll step back from the Gospels. Who's he the most fierce with? It's the religious people. Does that always sort of shock you? We talk about, let's say, we talk about that we're behind enemy lines today and we're in a war. Our first thought is we're in a war with Hollywood. We're in a war with our culture that's gone crazy. We're in the war with all these laws that are changing on us. But that's not really who Jesus fought his strongest battles with. He sort of expected that heathen people would act like heathen people. Who he fought with were the religious. Who he was most upset with were the people who had taken what was meant to help you have a relationship with God and had made it simply into a book of rules and regulations that was so detailed and so uptight that nobody could pass the test. And so Jesus comes in a world where God is to live among his people, and people are to be drawn to God, and people are being run away from God because of a legalistic religion that says nobody can win and nobody can make it. A religion that was judgmental, a religion that looked at people as simply being sinners without hope, a religion that set itself up in a snotty position of looking down their religious noses at everybody else. And Jesus was fierce in battling that. Why? Because step back again for a moment. If you're Satan and you're trying to mess the world up and you're trying to get people away from God, what's the best way for you to do it? To work through government? I don't think so. The best way for you to keep people away from God is to present a perverted religion that will not allow people to get close to God. It's a much more effective task. And that's what Satan did. And that's why we see Jesus almost picking fights. I mean, go with me to Luke chapter 6. Look at this fight he picks. On another Sabbath, let me say what's being talked about there is he's just had one fight on the Sabbath before because his disciples happened to pick some grain and eat. And so now it's the next Sabbath. And he went into the synagogue and he's teaching, and a man was there whose right hand was shriveled. The Pharisees and the teachers of the law were looking for a reason to accuse Jesus. In the long run, not just to accuse him, to kill him. And they watched him closely to see if he would heal on the Sabbath. But Jesus knew what they were thinking. Don't you love that? Have you ever thought to yourself, if you're around Jesus, you better not think? Okay? Because he knows what you're thinking. And he knows they're after him. And they're trying to entrap him. But watch his boldness. He said to the man with the shriveled hand, "Get up, stand in front of everyone." So he got up and he stood there. Then Jesus said to him, "I ask you, what is lawful on the Sabbath, to do good or to do evil, to save life or destroy it?" He looked around at them all, and then he said to the man, "Stretch out your hand." He did so, and his hand was completely restored. But the Pharisees and teachers of the law were furious, and they began to discuss with one another what they might do to Jesus. Now, have you ever wanted to give Jesus some public relations advice? I mean, Jesus, come on, man. I mean, this guy's been, his arm's been shriveled a long time, man. You don't have to do it today. Would you just wait till Sunday? Could you just stay off this Sabbath bit? I mean, you are picking fights that you don't need to pick. Come on, slow it down a little bit, Jesus. Let me tell you, Jesus didn't look at it that way. He believed it was a fight he needed to pick because the religion was so perverted and so enmeshed in its traditions and rules that it forgot about people. You ever been there before? You ever been to a church where maybe one Sunday someone was saved and came to know the Lord and was reborn, and on that same Sunday someone made the mistake of breaking one of our traditions? And in the foyer, nobody's talking about the dude that was saved. Everybody's talking about whatever new thing somebody did. That's why Jesus fought this. Because it's so easy for us to do. We flip over just a couple more chapters. Luke chapter 13. He's done the same thing. He's healed on the Sabbath. Verse 15, the Lord answered him, "You hypocrites, don't each of you on the Sabbath untie your ox or donkey from the stall and lead him out to give it water? Then should not this woman, a daughter of Abraham, who Satan has kept bound for 18 long years, be set free on this Sabbath day from what bound her?" He's fierce. When he said this, all his opponents were humiliated. But the people were delighted with all the wonderful things he was doing. Not a wise move to humiliate your opponents. But Jesus didn't care because he loved the people. And the people were delighted because the door was being reopened to God. He's fierce. He's focused. He's fierce. One more point here. He is forceful. I mean, you know this story from John chapter 2. We have two stories about Jesus going to the temple. One at the beginning of his ministry here, one at the end of his ministry. I mean, Jesus goes into the place where people are supposed to meet God. This is the place of connection to God, and it's an absolute travesty. You remember the story. Let's read it quickly. When it was almost time for the Jewish Passover, Jesus went up to Jerusalem. In the temple courts, he found people selling cattle, sheep, and doves, and others sitting at tables exchanging money. So he made a whip out of cords and drove all from the temple courts, both sheep and cattle. He scattered the coins of the money changers and overturned their tables. To those who sold doves, he said, "Get these out of here. Stop turning my Father's house into a market." His disciples remembered what was written, "Zeal for your house will consume me." What a story. Now let's go back and look at this story again. This time let's go slow. Because again, some of these stories, guys, we miss because we've read them so many times. Let's go back, all right? Go back to the first verses. You'll see that on the next slide. First of all, understand, this is not just an angry outburst from Jesus. Sometimes I think Jesus walks in, he loses his temper, and everything goes crazy. No. Jesus goes in, you can see from these two verses, that he sort of checked the place out. He looked what's going on. Then look at the next verse, if you would. In verse 15, the Bible says there that he made a whip out of cords. Again, this is not some man who's lost his temper. This is a man who sees what's going on, takes the time to find these cords, takes the time to make a whip out of them. He's not in some crazy hurry. He's thinking about what he's doing. And he makes this whip of cords, and he drove out the sheep and the cattle. Can you imagine the noise? I mean, the sheep pens, the cattle pens are being knocked over. There's a stampede out of the temple as Jesus raises his voice and he begins to run them out with this whip. And then he goes to the table and he scatters the coins. You ever just dropped a few coins off a counter onto a tile floor and saw them bounce like marbles and heard the noise? Can you imagine the havoc in the temple as these coins are going everywhere and their sellers are scrambling on their knees to try to pick them up and save their money? And then Jesus overturned their tables. It's sort of interesting little thing. With the doves, he shows it sort of a tenderness, you know. He asked them to be carried out. They're not going to be hurt. And then finally we get down to verse 17 and we see what drove him. Zeal for my Father's house consumes me. Jesus was passionate for the things of God. He was passionate for the people of God. What he's so ticked off about here is the place where people are supposed to connect with God has become impossible. And not only has it become impossible to connect with God, but it's also become a place where you rip people off by charging them exorbitant prices for their sacrifices. And so Jesus comes in, thoughtfully makes a whip of cords, and he runs them all out. It's an amazing story. Amazing story. And we see that other side of Jesus' personality. So let's talk about it a little bit. Because here's our theme over these weeks. We want to behold him and we want to become like him. That's what we discovered a few weeks in 2 Corinthians chapter 3. Where the Apostle Paul says, in this new covenant where we can see God face to face, we see him and we reflect him. Guys, that's the way you're going to grow as a Christian. You've got to get yourself into these gospel stories. You've got to put yourself into the personality of Jesus Christ. You've got to come to know him to the point that he is like a best friend who begins to rub off on you and to rub you the right way. And so today we see this other side of Jesus' personality that's needed. I've been reading a book that's helped me a lot with this sermon. If you'd like to read more in detail, it's by a man named John Eldredge called Beautiful Outlaw. Now, I want to share a couple quotations there from you under this topic of behold. First of all, here's what he says. Too often we see Jesus as a wandering storyteller, no more controversial or dangerous than a clerk in a health food store. I love that quote. I hope you're not a clerk in a health food store, all right? But guys, have we not taken this multi-dimensional, three-dimensional Jesus and turned him into this flat character that's just a wandering, sweet storyteller with a smile on his face? My friends, he's much more than that. I like also what Eldridge said here. The same man who could be so playful is a man on fire. He's on fire. Can I ask you, is that the Jesus that you see? Is that the Jesus we talk about? Okay, let me sort of challenge us here. Is that the Jesus we sing about? And we sing so many awesome songs that reflect this other side of Jesus. But where are the songs about the strength and the power and the focus and the fierceness and the forcefulness about Jesus? Here's a recent song by David Crowder, How He Loves Us. Listen to the words. I don't have a problem with these words, but they don't tell the whole story. He's jealous for me, loves like a hurricane. I am the tree. And I realize just how beautiful you are and how great your affections are for me. And heaven meets earth like an unforeseen kiss. And my heart turns violently inside of my chest. That's a romantic song, friends. I mean, think of some of the other songs that we sing. There's no place that I'd rather be than in your arms of love. And I love that. I believe that. But do we sing anything else? Hey, I think some of us have bought into this sweet, compassionate Jesus, which he was. But we've not seen the other side of Jesus. And it reflects on us because we have become what we have focused on. And Christians in America are way too flat. We lack passion. We're just trying to be nice people. We think that's what it means to follow Jesus. Now, while we're talking about hymns, it's not just in the new hymns. How about fairest Lord Jesus? Jesus, meek and gentle. He's like a rose trampled on the ground. He took the fall and through it all, he took it from me. Just sweet little rose on the ground, Jesus, being trampled on. My friends, what I want to challenge you about and challenge me about this morning is that's not the full picture of Jesus. And until we get the full picture, we're not going to become like him. So let's talk about become for a moment. Here's the question I've got for you today. Are you playful and are you passionate? Last week I loved preaching about the playfulness of Jesus. I think that's another side of Jesus' personality that we've almost missed. People love being around Jesus. Sinners thought he was awfully fun. And he was playful. He had inside stories, and inside jokes. And you can just read it as you read through the Gospels slowly and clearly. But he's also this passionate man who can be full of the fury of heaven. Now, let me say some things here. I think this is one reason that most churches are made up of a majority of women. Because if we're not careful, we have only painted a feminine picture of Jesus. He's sweet, he's nice, he's compassionate. He is. But that's not all of it. There's a great book came out years ago called Why Men Hate Going to Church. And one of the things they say in that book is because we have so feminized church and feminized Jesus that a man that's bold, that's brash, that's a little rough around the edges, thinks, there's no place for me in this sweet, nice little organization. They don't need someone like me. I might be like a bull in a china cabinet. Let me tell you, you go in John chapter 2, Jesus was a bull in a china cabinet. Now, it's really ironic for me. I've had an interesting week this week. Yesterday, I went to Tuscaloosa to speak at the memorial service for a friend of mine I went to college with named Rick Dalchi. Rick was a senior when I went to Alabama as a freshman. And he was all man. He was out there. He was rough. He was outspoken. And this past Tuesday night, he went down to read his Bible and watch the news. His lazy boy and his wife found him 30 minutes later dead. God just worked out earlier that day. And as I was talking to his children and his wife and his friends and asking them to help me, they almost described my friend in really, at first glance, contradictory terms. It certainly contrasting terms. They would say he was a serious man, but he loved to cut up. He was tough, in the same sense they'd say he was gentle. He had a hard exterior, and he was like a bull in a china cabinet, but he had a soft heart. He was straightforward, and yet he was childlike. One of his daughters said, you never knew what was going to come out of his mouth next. Yet he could find the best in others. His wife said he was intense, and yet he was so much fun. I mean, he was a character. I remember when I was campus minister there, and I was undergoing some criticism. Can you believe that? And Rick cornered me in the lobby one Sunday. He said, buddy, he said, I've been hearing about these people talking about you. You need me to take some people out for you? I mean, he just was that kind of character. And yet when I got up to preach the sermon, I shared with him, it was so ironic on this week to preach this funeral in between sermons on the playfulness of Jesus and the fierceness of Jesus. Because that was Rick. He was fierce, outspoken, and yet where he shined was with children. For the last 30 years, he's taught the 2-year-old class in that church, way beyond when his children had left. And they loved him. If Jimmy Dockery were here, Jimmy Dockery grew up in that church. I was talking with Jimmy this week. Rick was his mentor. He said, the reason I went to church as a teenager is because Rick Daltrey was there and he made it cool. And when I missed church, he called me. And the first time I stood up to do the Lord's Supper, Rick Daltrey told me what to say. He said, I'd been in a whole lot of trouble without this guy because, not only did Rick take him to church, but he took him to play golf. He took him out to ski. I mean, he was just a man's kind of man, and he influenced people and children. One friend wrote me a story about how they had a child that would come to University Church in a wheelchair, and the parents weren't able to worship, so they decided that they would rotate keeping the child so the parents could worship. And so the first Sunday, Rick is the volunteer, and he shows up in his shorts and T-shirts and jogging shoes to take this kid around. And the man who wrote me, a man named John Hill, now lives in Norman, Oklahoma. And he said he moved to Norman, Oklahoma a couple years ago, and he noticed there was a grandfather who brought his grandson to church every Sunday in a wheelchair. And he would come to Sunday school, then he'd leave before worship because he didn't want to be disruptive. And John says, I want to start watching your kid during worship so you can worship. And the grandfather said, I haven't done that in 20 years. And John said, you can thank a man back in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, who showed me how to do this. Guys, what I'm saying is when it comes to us living out our faith, it encompasses it all. It encompasses the playfulness of Jesus and the passion of Jesus. And I want to ask us today, do we display those same two qualities? Where you work, do they know that you're playful, but do they know that you're dead serious about your faith? Do they know that you'll be the first one to cut up with them, but you'll be the first one, to say, here are the ethical standards that we're going to live by? In your home, do your children see you as being playful, but they also see you as being strong? Or are you going to be the one that's going to say, guys, this kind of behavior is not okay in our home. You're not walking out of my house with that dress on because it's too provocative. We're not going to talk that way. We're going to put God first. I know you guys aren't wanting to, but we're going to go to Sunday school today. I know you want to just go and let's go and eat out, but we're going to take a stand. Can I ask you, do your children see you as being playful and as being passionate? What I'm afraid of, guys, is we have so few passionate people today. We're just milquetoast, man. We're just one-dimensional. And what your children and what your wife and what your family need to see is they need to see you be like Jesus. And they need to see that you can crawl on the floor and play like anybody. But when it comes to what's important and priorities, that you're willing to take a stand. I mean, in this church, my friends, we need people that are playful and joyful. And I love the atmosphere of this church. I love that people walk in the doors and they say, I sense the joy of the Lord. But I hope they also sense there's some passion. And it scares me when I see so many of us, we just come in here so lackadaisical, you know. We don't care what time we show up. We don't care what we do. Some of us sit there and we don't sing. And people look across, I'm telling you, they notice that. And you know, when it's time for us to be fired up about something, you know, it's like, okay, preacher, entertain me. Man, just, you know, tell me some stories. I dare you make me enjoy church today. Because what we need to do is we need to come to church with a passion for God. We spend all week with God, and we come in here, we even reflect Him here. Nobody's got to beg us to move up, or nobody's got to beg us to participate in worship, and we don't have to manipulate the thing, and we don't have to go to Sunday school class and beg somebody to make a comment, because we've come in here with a passion. And nobody has to say, would you please turn around and greet a guest and not just stand there like a lump on a log? Because you come here with a mission. You come here with the passion of Jesus. And I'm telling you, we're in dire need of it. We need elders that are passionate. We need small group leaders that are passionate. We need ministry leaders that are passionate. We need servants across this church that are just on fire for God. That we could say about them, they're just like Jesus. Zeal for God's house has consumed them. You understand what I'm saying? That reflects Jesus. And you might be a little rough around the edges. You might even be a little bit too outspoken sometimes, at least in our politically correct day. But you love Him, and you want to be like Him. And you know He didn't make everybody happy. And we won't either. You go to a church that tries to make everybody happy, and I'm telling you, you're going to go to a lame church. Because Jesus knew it was worth the fierce battle for people to be able to connect to God. And if He had to shake some things up and even break some traditions for people to break through for God, He would do it. Now here's the good news as we close this story out. This hunted man was not only hunted, he was the hunter. You see, the reason he did this and the reason he fought so fiercely was because he came for you and me. He came for that person that was outcast, that didn't think they could ever fit into a church. He came for that person struggling with addictions who wasn't sure their life would ever be worthwhile. He came for that lonely person who needed a friend. He came for you in your sins. How far is He willing to go? He's willing to go to a cross. He's willing to descend into the bowels of hell and lead out captives. Because you're going to miss it if you just think He was hunted. It may look that way. He was the hunter. And He's coming for you. And He's coming for me. Can you respond to Him? Today, do you need to become one of His followers? Today, is it time that you got some passion in your life for God? Maybe you had it a long time ago when you first became a Christian, but something has happened and you're just, why would anybody want to be like me and you? We're just are boring people, religious people. Sorry to get carried away here. They want to see some life. There's enough deadness out there. There's enough people just existing. That's why when they see something different in us, they're drawn to it. There's a passion, there's a purpose, there's a reason behind life. And we're willing to ferociously fight for it just like Jesus. Just like Jesus fought for your soul. We'll fight for their soul. If you need to come today for us to pray for you, today you want to be baptized, just come right now. Let's stand together and sing.